Chapter 992. Aside from Linda and Mrs. Brown, Matt Rich was the first person who gave a toast to Alex to thank him for the donation that he made to the orphanage. The other people were all only toasting him, not because of the money that he had donated to the orphanage, but simply because they had found out that he seemed to be a wealthy person. These were two completely different starting points. Those who rushed forward to toast him for the donation that he had made to the orphanage really cared about the orphanage. On the other hand, those people who were simply giving him a toast were only doing so because they wanted to build up a relationship with him. After all, for all these people here today, anyone who could easily donate $2 million to the orphanage at will would not be any simple or ordinary person. This has already far exceeded their understanding. Alex and Matt Rich drank the glass of wine together. Matt Rich signed sincerely as he said, "Alex, I'm really very happy to see how you've turned out today. I've always felt that you were different compared to the rest of us even back then. I don't know why I've always thought that you were a great person who would be promising in the future. I really did not expect you to turn out doing so well in life." Alex smiled indifferently before he said, "When we were both sleeping on the construction site together in the past, we would be very happy if we had enough food to eat every day. When we received our pay every month, we would spend a little more extravagantly. We would buy 2 more extra dishes and a few bottles of beer, and at that time, I thought that it was really a great satisfaction to be able to drink in the shed on the construction site." After a pause, Alex continued speaking, "Because of that experience, I don't expect much materially now. Even if I'm eating better food, wearing better clothes, or living in a better house, that doesn't really make much of a difference to me." Matt Rich nodded earnestly before he said, "Brother, I understand what you are trying to say. We were both working at the same place and earning the same amount of money at that time. However, I would always save up all of my hard-earned money for myself because I had always been hoping that I would be able to turn my life around with this capital. On the other hand, you've always donated all of your hard-earned money to the orphanage. At that time, I had already felt that I could never be compared to you in this life because you're so much better than I am." After that, Matt Rich sighed softly before he laughed and said, "Facts have clearly proven that I'm really nothing at all." Alex replied solemnly, "Brother, do not undervalue yourself at any time. As long as you can act in a way that is worthy of the world, worthy of your conscience, and worthy of yourself, then you'll still be a very happy person even if you do not have a lot of material possessions in your hands." After that, Alex continued speaking, "Just look around in this world. How many wealthy people have made their money by doing bad things and completely disregarding their own conscience? How many people are deliberately thinking of ways to steal, take, cheat, or occupy things from other people? There are seriously too few people who have a clear conscience." Emma had been silently listening to Alex's words throughout this whole entire time. She suddenly felt that the image of her husband has suddenly become very radiant in her heart at this moment. Emma has already been impressed from the minute he decided to donate his money to the orphanage to the moment that he said a statement like this. Matt Rich had already drunk quite a bit of wine and the alcohol had already clouded his mind. He acted a little impulsively at this time. He held Alex's hand as he said with red eyes, "Alex, I've been living a muddled life for more than 20 years now. I finally understand the meaning of life now. Now when I think about it, I shouldn't have left in the first place. The reason why I went to Manchester is because I thought that I'd be able to make something out of my life. I thought that I would be able to make a fortune and build a good life for myself. In the past few years, I've never thought about actively giving back to the orphanage where I had grown up in. I really feel a little guilty looking back at my life now." Alex smiled slightly as he said, "Matt Rich, we have to take care of ourselves first before we can take care of others. If you can't even take good care of yourself, I don't want you to donate the limited amount of money that you have to the orphanage. So, you have to take good care of yourself first. All of us have already endured a lot of suffering in the past and we have no family nor anyone else that we can depend or rely on. The only person that we can rely on is ourselves. At a time like this, You have to treat yourself better and be nicer to yourself, and let yourself live a little better first." Matt Rich burst into tears and he choked as he said, "You're persuading me like this, but why don't you do the same for yourself then? I know that when Mrs. Brown had fallen ill, you raised money desperately and you gave all the money that you could find to Mrs. Brown so she could get treatment for herself. At that time, why didn't you focus on treating yourself better and giving yourself a better life first?" Alex replied embarrassedly, "We're both in completely different situations after all. I'm already a married man while you aren't." After he spoke, Alex held Emma's hand before he said to Matt Rich, "Everyone in Oris Hill knows that I am the famous live-in son-in-law who is living off my wife. My wife provides me with food, drink, and even a roof over my head. I don't need to spend a single penny at all to eat, drink, or keep myself warm because I have such a good wife. Therefore, it would be useless for me to have a lot of money anyway." When Alex suddenly held her hand, Emma became a little restless. When she heard Alex's words, she suddenly felt very touched. She felt as though she was starting to understand her husband a little more at this time. At the same time, she also felt that her husband was a complete stranger to her. In the past, she had always thought that her husband was a hopeless and useless person who had no ambitions at all. She thought that her husband was a good-for-nothing person who did not even dare to fight back after getting scolded or beaten up. But now, Emma suddenly felt that her husband was even more unfathomable and profound than she had thought.